My name is Brian Sheehy. I'm the History Department Coordinator at North Andover High. This is our third installment of the North Andover High Race Amity Roundtable. Tonight, we're going to talk a little bit about Black Lives Matter, and I'm going to turn it over and let all of the other members of the club introduce themselves. Supraja?
Hi, I'm Supraja. I'm a rising senior and I'm the president of Race Amity Club. Eamon?
Hi, I'm Eamon O'Carroll. I'm also a rising senior at NAS, and I am a member of the Race Amity Club. Shruti?
Hi, I'm Shruti. I'm also a senior and a member of Race Amity.
Hi, I'm Anika. I'm a rising senior and I'm also a member of the Race Amity Club.
So we're excited to talk tonight a little bit about some of the controversy around the slogan Black Lives Matter, and some people feel that the slogan should be All Lives Matter. And I want to get your opinion today on what you guys think about whether it should be All Lives Matter or Black Lives Matter. Eamon, you go first.
Well, I think it has to be Black Lives Matter because what so many people have pointed out is that Black Lives Matter, all lives will matter when Black Lives Matter. And because the Black community is the one that is under siege right now, it has to be Black Lives Matter. And there are many on the right who do not seem to understand that messaging. And so they choose to counter Black Lives Matter with All Lives Matter because they think that Black Lives Matter is singling out one group and elevating it above the others.
Just something that you said really quick, that you said right now. How is right now any different than 3 months ago, 3 years ago, 30 years from now?
Well, it's not. It's just the present situation. It's, it's All Lives Matter versus Black Lives Matter. 50 years ago, 60 years ago, 100, 200, 300, it's always been this idea of those who want to have an egalitarian society and those who want to suppress the minority because they fear they're losing their grip as a majority.
Good points.
I agree with your point on how it's kind of made to counter the Black Lives movement. And I definitely feel like it's heavily like a phrase used by Republicans, right? Like mostly people on the right. And I think that it comes down to they just don't like the attention being brought to Black Lives Matter. And I think in the end, I think they're trying to make themselves feel better by saying, oh, give us back the attention. Like you said, Eamon, they want to maintain that majority, that egalitarian society. But I've been thinking about this a lot. And how do you explain to someone who believes in All Lives Matter? How do you explain to them that that's not correct? And I think that it comes down to kind of asking them why they believe all lives matter versus Black lives, and then saying if all lives matter, and then asking them like subgroups. How do you think LGBTQ plus rights matter? How do you think maybe Asian minorities matter? And going through the list and asking them how, if they recognize that these different minorities are being systematically oppressed. And then I think once that recognition hits, that's when they realize that, oh, you're right, there's not an equality right now. And that's why the Black Lives Matter movement is there to kind of bring awareness to that inequality and kind of stabilize a general knowledge that this is happening.
Anika, what do you think?
Yeah, I agree with Shruti. I think that phrase, Black Lives Matter, it's not meant to undermine the fact that like all lives matter. It's just meant to put emphasis on the group that's being systematically oppressed at the time so that we can help those that are being systematically oppressed and get them out of that state. And like Eamon said, have it so that all lives will matter, because that can't happen until Black Lives Matter. Supraja.
Yeah, I think one really important point that I heard Shruti bring up was we hear the phrase all lives matter, I think, especially for me, from probably people who are older, like parents and uncles and aunts. And I feel like the way you talked about kind of taking them through almost, I guess, through each step of talking about why each minority matters is really important, because you're almost like showing them, it's almost like a seeing is believing. So you're seeing how each one, like, even though we might be oppressed, like Black lives at this moment are the ones that are, I guess, externally being put down and oppressed, I guess. So it kind of comes to show that I lost my train of thought. It kind of comes to show that we can actually explain why at this moment Black lives do matter, even though we do respect their opinion of all lives mattering. I think she brought up a really good way of explaining to people who think all lives matter, kind of go through step by step.
And Shruti, back to your earlier point, again, how do you convince these people? Well, it starts with listening. I shared with the group this morning a TED Talk, which is about a Black man who became friends with an imperial wizard of the KKK, and he was recounting his experience doing that, and how over the course of a decade, he managed to slowly but surely, while respecting this KKK member, he convinced him to leave the clan. Because if you listen to people and respect their views, instead of just saying you're with us or against us, that is how you create real change. And I think that's a lot of the problem you see on social media too, is there's a lot of posts about, if you're not an anti-racist, you're a racist. If you support Donald Trump, you are a racist. These broad sweeping generalizations don't get us any further. So it's about listening, understanding, and trying to help people instead of forcing them back to their corner where they're only going to hold on to those views that they have so rooted within themselves.
I think that's a great point, Eamon. I think that's the whole point of this club. That's the whole point of why we're doing things like this, is to listen, to share experiences, to talk, and not trying to change anybody's mind, but just to continue a conversation, and I think that's an important, that was very well said. Shruti?
Yeah, just to add on that a little bit, I actually saw this thing on Instagram where it was saying how to convince a Trump supporter that he's racist, and it was all good points. But in the end, you can't just hit someone with like hard facts and expect them to change, or like hit them with your own logic and expect them to understand what you think. And I think it really comes down to asking them why their opinions are their opinions. So like if you ask someone, why do you support Trump? Can you give me a couple of reasons? Or not even Trump, you can just say, why do you support All Lives Matter? And then they'll kind of backtrack and really think about why they support their own argument. And that kind of gets them thinking about, do I have a good reason to support this? Just another thought.
Yeah, I saw that. I saw something similar about that too on Instagram, where you sort of ask them questions like directly about their own beliefs. And as they think about the answers to them, they kind of find like doubts sometimes in what like those answers might be. And that kind of helps them or makes them want to change their viewpoint a little bit. So I definitely agree that's a good way to at least help change people's minds about something.
I just want to add
Piece to this All Lives Matter versus Black Lives Matter is, I don't think either of them, if you say Black Lives Matter, I don't think it threatens anybody, and I feel like people feel threatened by that, and I don't think you need to. And I think that what you guys have said with the discussing and explaining and asking questions, hopefully people will come to that. Like, what's the threat of saying Black Lives Matter? What's the threat of saying Asian lives matter? Why? Like, why do you feel threatened by that? Sorry, Shruti, go ahead.
I just want to clarify one thing. I know we've been saying like at the moment a lot about Black Lives Matter, but I think it just comes down to Black lives have always mattered, but this is when like we're getting that recognition is coming out. So that's why we're saying at the moment. And also with your question, coming back to like why people shouldn't feel threatened, I think it's just this whole movement, Black Lives Matter, it really is a humanitarian movement, and I think it's coming down to like political sides when it really wasn't meant to be. I think people think that if you say all lives matter, you're a Republican, you're a Trump supporter, and you're racist, but that's really generalizations and stereotypes. And then if you believe in Black Lives Matter, sometimes they think, oh, you don't care about anyone else in the world. You only are focusing on this one minority, and you're all leftists. So I think it just comes down to like miscommunication between these two groups. And I think in the end, like you said, it just comes down to leading conversations, because that's how you break down those barriers.
And
Yeah, I agree. A lot of it is just like ignorance from like both sides, especially like the people who do believe in like that slogan of all lives matter and maybe don't feel threatened by the phrase Black Lives Matter probably are just ignorant of the issue as a whole. So maybe it's just like learning about the issue would definitely help change that.
just one last point to Shruti's point. The idea of it being one party's or the other party's motto is really the problem created by both parties wanting to co-opt this movement for their own cause. The Republicans want to seem like the defenders of the white majority, which because that's where their base is, whereas Democrats want to seem like the defenders of the minorities. And that has always been the issue with racial politics, especially like, the Johnson did it in the 60s and he, got the black vote because of that. And you see it again now. So how do you prevent it from being politicized? Because that's a big issue.
Any last thoughts, anybody?
Yeah, one last thing. Just to your point, Eamon, I feel like it comes down to recognizing that we're all human beings, and just skin color shouldn't be the determination factor of how you're treating other people. And I think until we all recognize that, nothing's going to change. It's always going to be politicized. But I do think that our generation is becoming more educated, I feel, and we're kind of recognizing our differences, and we're not discriminating based on our differences. And I think in the future we'll be able to create some kind of system where race isn't politicized, like you said.
I hope you guys are right. Anyways, we're going to wrap up for our session right now. We thank you. Follow us on Twitter. We'll post some more videos soon. Thank you for logging in.